Hello and welcome back to our show. We are back with a brand new episode of the Investor Education and Awareness Initiative of Aditya Birla Sun Life Mutual Fund in association with your favorite personal finance magazine, Outlook Money. The second wave of the COVID has subsided and the nation is trying its best to avert the third wave. Investors have also had a roller coaster ride with many lessons drawn from the experience of the last 18 months or so. The biggest lesson of all is how to get your asset allocation right so that you protect your wealth. In today's episode, we will ask some experts of industry about this very art of asset allocation. With the commitment of Outlook Money and Aditya Birla Mutual Fund towards creating awareness about personal finance, we bring you this new episode with the theme Art of Asset Allocation and Science of Scheme Selection. We are joined today by Mr. K.S. Rao, Head Investor Education and Distribution Development, Aditya Birla Sun Life Asset Management Company. Mr. Rao, an alumnus of IIM Calcutta, has spent over 2 decades in the mutual fund industry. And in his current role, he leads his organization's efforts towards investor education and distribution development. We are also joined by Mr. Amit Trivedi, author, speaker, trainer, and blogger with over 26 years of professional experience in capital markets. As a trainer, he has trained over 83,000 participants through almost 1,300 workshops across 130 different locations in the country. Our third panelist today is Mr. Harish Rao, an eminent money management coach, an author, and a finance expert who has also conducted hundreds of training programs for leading mutual funds and banks all across India. So let's get straight into it. My first question is for Mr. Amit Trivedi. Mr. Trivedi, there is a perception among the general population in the country that retail investors do not make money in the equity markets. What is your view on the matter?
It's a very interesting question, and often we will come across this question. But in my understanding, the money or the markets, they don't know whether you are a retail investor, HNI investor, or an institution. It is the investor who makes or loses money. The market or the money do not decide it. What we have observed is generally a disciplined investor ends up making money, but somebody who's trying to chase returns without proper plan ends losing money.
Right, disciplined investing. That is the key, and I think mutual funds these days have shown how people can also make money in the markets, in the equity markets also. Mr. Rao, I would like to ask you another question. Mutual funds have emerged as a strong tool to invest over the last decade. They have helped a lot of investors to generate wealth against the perception that people lose money in the equity markets. So, how do mutual funds bust this perception of retail investors that they are not going to earn money, they will lose money in the markets if they invest in equity markets?
Thank you so much, Mr. Vishav, for having me here. And indeed, it's an honor to be among the best of the panel around. And glad to be back with Vishav on these conversations. Thanks to Outlook Money for making these conversations happen month on month. Probably the perceptions, whatever we have, that is where we let us change the outlook with Outlook Money and the outlook on the money. And coming back on the question, I think there is one, you said right, I think mutual funds have become the most preferred tool of investment. That's where you can look at retail investors coming into the mutual funds. In fact, last 5 years, indeed, there is a good surge on the people investing with the mutual funds, and preferably through the SIP route. And the perception which they carry over a period of time, and most of us, who carries the perception? And I think Amit ji and we were discussing a previous episode. When it comes to a personal finance, person comes before the finance. And each of us, when I invested, what for I invested, and what is that I got it. Fund return can be fantastic, but my return may not be the great. And it all depends on why I entered, where I entered, and what I entered. This is a truly a perception, and one need to break the myth. And the perception is when you are investing, invest for your goal and stay long, and you get the returns equal to the what fund is performing. But if you want to choose the market, time the market, and invest it, then this perception continues. Probably let me tell you a couple of other things. Like when I invest in the stock market directly, there is a every chance, I may gain substantial return, but I may lose substantially. But when it comes to the mutual fund, today is the topic is your art of asset allocation. And the one kind of asset allocation is already happening for me, whether even if I have chosen the equity or if I have chosen the debt or combination of both, because the fund manager is investing in the various securities, there is a asset allocation, there is a diversification which has happened. Means, your loss, which when it comes to the market, it can be much higher, it's much lesser. And when it comes to, it optimizes for you. Probably this perception may not be right at this point of time, and people need to look where my portfolio has gone wrong and sit with your advisor whether if that perception is right or no. And how you allocated your money. I think this conversation of next 45 minutes, probably we can dwell more how this art of asset allocation help us to optimize the returns, and what is that we can do. Probably we may not maximize. That diversification helps us. And I look at since it's a perception, the reality is when it is different. One need to analyze his own portfolio. Let me look at my own portfolio over last 1 decade. To be frank, it's like my mutual fund portfolio together. I mean, my equity, debt, and all allocations together. I had little over 12% annual return. It's a fantastic return I look at. But when I look at in the last 1 year market return of, market would have gone up by 100%. My portfolio would have gone up by only 40%. Then I say there is a perception, but perception I have underperformed. Perception I have not lost the money. It's like, and that perception has to go with because I have taken a choice. How do I have my asset allocation? I think, truly putting this art of asset allocation and science of scheme selection. And we three were earlier doing series of sessions on this, the AAA and Triple S. And we jokingly call it as a AAA is Amar Akbar Anthony and Triple S is Satyam Shivam and Sundaram. Let me dwell the last part before I hand over to you. When you are investing in any mutual fund scheme and you are selecting, it has to be Satyam, Shivam, and Sundaram. Satyam is be truthful where you are allocating, and Shivam is be auspicious. What is the choice you are looking at? Then it will become Sundaram. It's become wonderful. I think that's the perception we can always take. Over to you. Thank you so much, Vishal.
Right. Thank you so much. Very nicely put. Satyam, Shivam, Sundaram, of course, and as you mentioned that market can perform at different, can generate different returns, and your portfolio can generate different returns, and depends on how you invest. And to understand that, I think people also need to understand, investors need to understand that all mutual funds are not the same. Among mutual funds also there is a lot of flexibility where money is invested. So my question is to Mr. Harish Rao. Mr. Harish Rao, can you help our viewers understand what are the different kind of mutual funds, how they are different from each other, and what should one look at while investing?
Thank you, Vishwa, and my kudos to the team at Outlook Money for organizing this. This is such a fascinating topic. AAA, Triple S is a wonderful topic and something that's important to every single investor. Yes, you're absolutely right. There are, three broad categories of mutual funds. Okay, you have equity, you have fixed income, and then you have a hybrid category. Okay, which is basically fixed income and equity. Now, amongst these categories, you have several variants and themes. So, for example, in equity, you have market capitalization based categories. You have style and theme based categories. So, you can have a large cap fund, a large and mid cap fund. You have a flexi cap fund. You have a multi cap fund. And then these are market capitalization based. Then you have theme and variance style based. So you have dividend yield, you have contra, you have focused, you have ELSS, and then you have various themes. You could have a theme that's called Gen Next, you can have a theme that's called MNC, etc., etc. So you have to really decide on what sort of a theme and a variant you want. And most mutual funds, either in their literature or in their fact sheets, will tell you what sort of market capitalization and what sort of style they are adopting. So if you see there is a style grid, so you can, by looking at the style grid, you will make out that this is predominantly a large cap oriented fund, which adopts, say, a value style of investing, or this is a mid cap oriented fund which adopts a growth style of investing. So these are things that you need to look at before you start investing. Similarly, you have the same themes and variants even in fixed income. So you have accrual based funds, and as a counterpoint you have duration based funds. If you're safety oriented, you have lower duration money market liquid type of funds, or if you want something that's slightly longer duration, you have a banking and PSU fund which is very safety oriented. And if you can't make up your mind and you want to give the full mandate to the fund manager to decide, where to get the returns for you, or the alpha as we call it, you can invest in a dynamic category where the call on what sort of a duration or what sort of a managed credit portfolio is left completely to the fund manager. It's important to note that SEBI has applied a lot of thought on this. Within each of these categories, of course, there is some amount of flexibility to the fund manager. So like when a fund manager constructs a flexi cap portfolio, there are broad limits, but within that they can tweak the portfolio. Investors are, advised to look at the riskometer, to have a look at the fund literature and fact sheets, and speak to their advisor before making individual choices. That's it, Vishwa. I think it's important that investors appreciate that the choices before them need to be carefully evaluated.
Absolutely, and with so much of so many options to choose of funds to choose from, I think it is key to decide not only where to invest but how much to invest where, and that is where asset allocation comes in. So, Mr. KS Rao, I would come to you. Asset allocation is said to be a key to build an effective portfolio and to gain returns over time. So, can you help our viewers understand what exactly is asset allocation and what does it entail?
Thank you so much, Vishal. I'll take it from where Harish was telling. It's like today we have too many funds to choose. There were a month back when I was looking at Amphi data, there was 1,027 open-ended mutual funds available. All that I need to do is what to choose and where to invest. And we end up most of the times going back to the top performing fund. And the fund performance is always already top. It's the performance in the Excel sheet shows it's fantastic returns, and I want to excel on my portfolio return on my statement of account. Sometimes the earlier question you said about the perception, where this perception goes wrong. And coming back on the asset allocation question, I'll put it in a simple language. I mean, what is an asset allocation? This I remember I was traveling with Harish for few programs in southern part of the India. And there is one example we used to quote too often. It's we go to a chef or pastry shop, and we want to create that recipe of the pastry which has been created. Best of the pastry we can go back, and we get those vanilla, and we get all those flour, and we can get that done. And if I am not understanding, the chef has given everything for me. What are the ingredients I need to buy? But if I am not understood from him what percentage of ingredients, how to mix it, my entire cake will not come. It will be a bunch of dough I get, and it will not be as good as the one which I got in the pastry shop. And it is similar is that asset allocation piece which can happen for us. And then if I go to a construction worker and I can ask him how you build this building. There is a cement, there is a sand, there is a water. And if I understood only that part, these are the three things, and I come back and mix, I want to build a building, and which is not in proportion, then it gets collapsed. All that I need to understand is these are the asset classes available. What proportion, how I need to mix, and what is that to build a tasty pastry or long-standing building. All that I need to understand the dynamics of the mix, right? Then I can mix it right. Then I can deliver to me that flavor of a tasty as well as or it's a strong food. And similar is the asset allocation. Which kind of asset you want to choose in? It's what is your proper asset allocation method? End of it, there are two things will happen. One, you get diversification, and so that one asset class may underperform, one asset class will overperform, so that you get optimized returns. You don't feel bad or sad at one point of the time. And second part of this asset allocation is always, when I have a goal, for example, for my retirement plan, I have a goal. I am over allocated to the equity because it's a little longer for me. I need to create a wealth. And within my broad asset allocation, even goal wise, I have an asset allocation. And this underpinning of asset allocation can only to help me. Either I want to grow my capital or my preserve my capital, or I can secure the right kind of returns in line with the fund performance. Day before yesterday, I was talking to Harish. When we go back to the cricket match and cricket analogy, and right asset allocation, there is a guy who has done exceedingly well in the first, and there is a guy who can stand still and hold the wicket on. There is a guy who is a great bowler. There is a guy who is a wonderful wicket keeper. All of them put together making the winning team. Similarly, the asset allocation, putting the right asset mix at right way, you are getting a winning allocation for you. So that asset allocation is the key to create a wealth and sustain that wealth for the long term. Otherwise, if last 1 year I am overboard on equity, I would have done fantastic. Whether I will sustain, only a matter of time it will tell whether you will sustain or not. To sustain, I need to have a right mix of my equity and debt or any other asset class which I can get. This is in nutshell I can talk about.
there were so many variety of analogies from cricket to cooking to construction, and I think that explains really well. Basically, what I understand is you need to get the recipe right. You need to go look beyond just the ingredients and focus on the proportion of the ingredients so you can make a great recipe. On those lines themselves, I'll ask Mr. Trivedi, when we talk about this recipe, what are some of the things that you observe in portfolios of various investors when it comes to their asset allocation, when it comes to their recipes? So is it too sweet? Is it too salty? I mean, what do you notice? And how much of one's portfolio should be allocated to mutual funds?
So I'll take up from where Mr. K.S. Rao was, speaking about a couple of analogies, and because he's already used a few analogies, I'll have to find something else. But before that, let me go back to what he said. There are a lot of times investors pick up mutual fund schemes based on performance of the schemes in the recent past. Now, this is one of the classic mistakes that people make, and the standard disclaimer that all mutual fund advertisements are supposed to mention past performance may or may not be sustained in future. It's there for a reason. Let's appreciate that, because what has happened in the past is something that continue or it may not continue. So that's a very important line, and this is one mistake that a lot of people make. Look at the case of this great fencing player Bhavani Devi. She did wonderful in Tokyo Olympics by winning the first round. Unfortunately, she lost in the second round. Now, if you look at the past performance, the first match was a super success, but the second match was not. But go back to any event before Tokyo Olympics, and India never had a fencer reaching this level. So in both the instances, the past performance was turned around. This is one mistake that people keep making, and we must appreciate that. Number two, a lot of people try to do things themselves, and that's where one of the days Mr. K.S. Rao and I were discussing one of the analogies, and something came to mind was IKEA. You can get a ready-made furniture from a furniture shop, or you can go to IKEA, buy a kit, and assemble the kit to get the furniture of your choice. However, the important part that a lot of people forget is in IKEA, the kit is ready-made, and in exact the number of screws that you need to fit the parts are already there. The parts are very well measured and cut, and are ready to be assembled. But if I simply go somewhere and pick up parts randomly, then just imagine what kind of furniture I'll assemble. And that's where creating a portfolio not only requires the right parts, but also in proper proportion. And this right parts and right proportion are always to be aligned with one's own unique situation, which is what are my financial goals and what is my risk appetite. Just imagine, otherwise what will happen is instead of getting a glass top dining table, a glass top chair. I can't sit on that. I mean, that's a classic mistake that can happen. Or the four legs of the chair may not be equal in size. And that's what a lot of people do with their portfolio. So even if you want to go to IKEA, assemble it yourself, which is perfectly fine. Take direct plans. There is nothing wrong with it. But then take advice from a registered investment advisor, or simply go to a mutual fund distributor and get a ready-made furniture. So not taking advice for the lure of getting it cheap may turn out to be extremely costly in the long run if you get the wrong piece of furniture. But this is the other mistake, and a lot of times the mistake is or buying cheap, but also the lure of the new. Look at the rush for the IPOs, and similarly look at the rush for the new fund offers. Find out if there is really something new in that, and find out that you need that as part of your portfolio. in many seminars I've mentioned earlier also, the way people go after the IPOs, just because it is an IPO, it may not be new. So let me ask a simple question to people out here, that if there is a new kidney hospital that is inaugurated next door, would you go and get a dialysis done? No, it's a new hospital, right? But you will go only if there is a problem or if there is a need. Otherwise, you will not go. This is the third mistake, the lure of the new. So new, past performance, cheap. The fourth mistake a lot of people make is looking at things which give them some tax exemption. So tax exemption is important. Post-tax returns are important. But go back to your need first. Otherwise, again, India is a country of a very large number of underinsured tax savers, because the insurance policies were bought not for the purpose of insurance cover, but for the purpose of tax saving. So those things get reflected in the portfolios as well. So many mistakes. I mean, I can go on and on because there are so many experiences, but I would stop here.
Right. So essentially, your investment should be in line with your goals. And on that point itself, my next question is to Mr. Rao, Mr. Harish Rao. For different goals, should there be, the asset allocation should also be different, or should there be one asset allocation, one common asset allocation for the entire portfolio, depending on what the person understands and what the market conditions are? So, what do you suggest to investors in this particular context?
That's a brilliant question, Vishwal. That's a really good question. There are no right or wrong answers in this. This is a question that has divided the financial planning fraternity. One of the best investment advisors I know, a person with a great track record, has separate goals or a separate asset allocation for every goal. Okay. He divides his typical investor's asset allocation or goals into contingency fund, retirement fund, and general purpose investment fund. So the contingency fund is 12 months of living expenses almost entirely into a low duration income fund. The retirement fund would be in 2 or 3 very proven large cap / multi cap funds, or if the person's risk appetite is low, a balanced advantage fund. And similarly is a portfolio for the general investment fund. And this has been working very, very well because he keeps, a look on the portfolio, and he prevents his investors from, doing any mistake. His investors don't do the mistakes that Amit had pointed out typically. The other, there is a wonderful behavioral trait called mental accounting. You might have, seen your mother, grandmother set aside some money for a goal. My mother used to do it because she used to go every summer holidays with, me and my brothers to Bombay. Her parents were from Bombay. So every summer we used to go to Bombay, and, she would save money over a period of time for that much awaited summer holiday in Bombay. Okay. Those were tough times, but she used to do this. So this was her discipline in ensuring that nothing comes between her and her Bombay holiday. So that's a technique that promotes a certain discipline, dedication, and focus on a goal. So if you have different goals and if you have different asset allocation, and you sort of ensure asset allocation to that goal, it's fair enough. But in defense for one overall asset allocation, I, for example, have one overall asset allocation, but I would consider myself to be an informed, long-standing investor in the market. I know the individual components of my asset allocation. So, the 10-15% which is there, in an ultra short bond fund or in a short-term fund are meant for liquidity requirements. Something that's been some income fund which has been there for 3-4 years are obviously taking, advantage of, triple indexation, 4 indexations, and, some amount of tax planning and doing that. There is certain amount of ELSS in it for, a certain reason. And there is a lot of equity funds in that for general, wealth creation. So I go through one overall asset allocation because it has worked well for me and I know the individual components in it. So really one cannot say whether separate asset allocations for every goal or one overarching asset allocation for, one universal goal is good enough. Stick to something that's, you're comfortable with, but always exercise, oversight over it. Keep reviewing it once in a year, and I think you're good to go. That's my 2 cents on that, Vish.
Right, right. Thank you so much. So, an overall asset allocation and individual asset allocations for different goals. Both, strategies work depending on how active you are in supervising them, and how much you understand them. But is there a thumb rule that you would recommend for deciding how much should an investor allocate to equity and debt? So I direct this question to Mr. K.S. Rao. Even when you have different asset allocations, but overall allocation between equity and debt, what is your recommendation? Any thumb
Thank you
rule
so
for
much.
that?
Thanks, Vishav. I think after the great analogy from Harish, I would like to say, then again, coming back to those personal finance of Amit conversation, and even this thumb rule, each of us, our biometric is very different, right? We have our thumb impressions when we got our Aadhaar card. All that we need to do is we are all independent and we are different. That's where our thumb impression. And whether these thumb rules or rules of thumb is right for us, I'm not very sure. Sometimes we used to say age minus your current age minus 100 minus current age is equal to your equity allocation, and the balance is the debt allocation. That's what you look at. But which one you need to choose, and sometimes it so happens how dynamically you can reallocate those money. And thumb rule, each of us have a different impression and have your own rule what you need to do. This depending on the various factors. One, your time horizon, your investment goals, your other personal finance comfort levels, your income. For example, to take my own example, I put it in that way. Contrary to the perception people have, my entire retirement money is allocated to the. I know I'm taking the biggest risk around it, and there is a thumb rule is normally you need to get a balanced fund. That's a great way to look at. But I moved to the equity fund. That's where I thought let me take one area full risk because my provident fund is into the full debt, and why should not have my other money into the full equity so that I have 50-50 or 60-40 depending on my provident fund balance. That's the first tool I kept for myself. And when it comes to other investment goals, the broad goal is 100 minus. This is what we spoke many a times. But you can keep if I can go, there is a fund category in the mutual funds called balanced advantage funds, or the hybrid funds, the balanced funds, where the fund manager will take a call. It's a 60-40. I don't need to bother. Always a fund manager takes care of it, and it happens for me. And that's another way of thumb rule where your investments. But when you are doing that. And how many times this is what I after a long time I had understood my own portfolio. When I was looking at, I was always looking at my mutual fund portfolio as an asset allocation, but unfortunately I have never considered my PPF PF is part which is available to me, which is my debt. Means every time I was overboarded on my debt, or if I can look at the place where you stay, your building where you stay, that is another class of real estate, which we are not counted into that. And second part is when you are allocating some commodities, and some of us we have this jewelry at home. That is, of course, we will not value, and it is most precious. But that is also you have allocated some commodities. Then each of us can have a different allocations to that. That's where the real thumb rule. But when I look at equity and debt, maybe 60-40 or 75-25, depending on your risk perception, depending on your time horizon, one need to decide. And after doing so many sessions with Outlook, and when we converse and these investment discussions, whether with Harish or Amit, we get there. I think best is to have an investment advisor with you. Then your asset allocation gets right, and you get the advisor right. We were working on this mutual funds IA campaign, and at that time we were discussing on various content and theme, and back end lot of theme and content was worked by Harish and Amit. People may not be aware of it. A lot of content they created for mutual funds IA campaign. And at that time, there is one tagline we were just discussing inside in the boardroom: mutual funds IA, but asset allocation jaruri. And this asset allocation is the thumb rule you decide for yourself.
Right, right, absolutely. So asset allocation is important, but it varies from person to person. But there must be, some factors that one must keep in mind. So, Mr. Trivedi, I come to you. What are those factors that one must keep in mind while deciding the right allocation for them? Because it will vary from person to person, but there should be some common factors that should be taken into account. So what do you think are they?
Yeah, so fantastic question. And once again, picking up from where Mr. K.S. Rao left, each of us have a different thumbprint, but then the process for getting the Aadhaar card is same for all. So here also there are certain steps for deciding on what kind of asset allocation one should create. The starting point has to be, what are your financial goals? Why are you investing? That has to be the starting point. A lot of advisors, a lot of mutual fund distributors, they follow certain thumb rules that if the goal is within the first 2 years, then they allocate all the money to liquid funds, ultra short-term bond funds, etc., etc. If it is between 2 years and 5 years, they look at the debt funds, corporate bond funds, banking and PSU funds, and stuff like that. If it is longer than 5 years, or some go a little conservative, if it is longer than 7 years, then they start allocating to equity. So some people have come up with that. But for that purpose, the primary step that one has to take is to decide on the financial goals. And the financial goals are nothing but the choices that you make, what kind of life you want to live, and convert that in terms of time horizon and money. How much money would be required when? So that's the first step. The second is, while let's say Harish and I may have similar financial goals, but still both of us may need a different portfolio, simply because Harish could be an aggressive investor by nature and I could be conservative, or vice versa. It's like when you go on a Mumbai-Pune highway or a Yamuna Expressway, somebody would be uncomfortable if the car crosses 80 kilometers on the upside, and somebody would be uncomfortable if the car is going less than 100 kilometers per hour. So that's also applicable to individuals' portfolios. It's the same road, it's the same journey, but two people may have different comfort levels. So that's your part of your risk profile. However, that entire risk profile can be broken into three different questions. One, what's your ability to take risk? Certain people have higher financial ability to take risk, some have lower ability to take risk. Just to elaborate on that point further, if the gap between my income and expenses is large, which means I'm saving high on month-on-month basis, then I have a higher capacity or higher ability to take risk. But if my surplus is small, then my ability shrinks. The next question is, do I need to take risk? So ability is one, need is another. And that need is my need for beating inflation. Can I achieve all my goals simply keeping money in savings account? Then I don't need to take any risk. But most of us cannot. So we need to take risk. There's a need. And number three is the willingness. Will I get a good night's sleep after putting money in equity? That's a big question. Because if I'm not going to get good sleep, I don't have to worry about saving for retirement anyway. So need, ability, and willingness are the 3 points as step number 2. So first is financial goals, and second is your risk-taking ability. Now, within a risk profile, within that risk profile, a lot of things would come in, which is your income versus expense, your assets versus liabilities, your existing investments, your time horizon, the number of dependents you have in the family, whether you have built enough contingency fund, whether you've taken sufficient insurance, etc., etc. No, that's a very, very detailed approach. I started with that detailed approach because that's the right answer, but it is intimidating for a large number of people. Oh, does it require so much work to arrive at asset allocation? Then don't worry. Look at what Harish mentioned. He said, keep it simple. So you may simply say, I'll allocate 1/3 of my money into equity, 1/3 of my money into fixed income, and 1/3 of my money into liquid investments. Decide your ratios, whichever way you want. But keep it simple and start. And in my experience, the best investment plan is the one that one starts the journey on. That's the best investment plan. Then later on, you can do all the fine tuning. So you can go this much detail, and a lot of high quality mutual fund distributors and financial investment advisors, they would recommend the detailed approach by looking at the entire financial situation and mental makeup. But otherwise, one can simply start with a simple allocation and start the journey till the time you find a good financial advisor to guide you.
Right, right. And as you said, it may be intimidating for a lot of investors with so many factors to take into account. And it's common that some mistakes would also be made while creating a portfolio. So I asked Mr. Harish Rao, what are some mistakes that investors usually make when it comes to asset allocation?
Thank you, Vishwa. This is a good, interesting question. During the lockdown, I have been exposed to quite a few portfolios from my friends, classmates, relatives, neighbors, and very interesting things have come to light. So just to highlight, I find there are three broad mistakes. One, certain asset classes are completely blindsided by investors. One is equity. Equity is completely underrepresented in most Indians' portfolio. Some have not even touched it, not even dipped their toe in the river called equity, right? So either they are financially, underexposed to equity, their knowledge levels are not good, or they are, scared about equity or whatever. So there's a perception problem here. Second, for example, certain investors don't have gold as a financial asset class, even though most Indian households would require gold, whatever be the religion, whatever be the community, whatever be the social structure or income levels, there is some amount of gold required, during our children's wedding. But gold in today's milieu can be accumulated as a financial asset, and there would be very little leakage in that value. But still, most people tend to accumulate gold in physical, and that too in fully physical form, in jewelry form, in which there is a lot of expense, a lot of leakage, and it's clearly suboptimal. So when you have an option of accumulating gold in a financial asset form, where the expense ratio is extremely low and it's very optimal, people should embrace it. That is one mistake. Blindsided or overweight, vice versa, overweight on a certain asset class. Second, many portfolios, are like a train where the chain is pulled very often. Okay, in February and March, the chain is pulled so that, an uncle selling, an insurance policy is taken because there is Section 80C benefit in it. I think this was something that Amit Bhai had, talked about. Insurance is completely ad hoc and very impulsively or, very suboptimally purchased in India. People don't look at their human life value and buy, insurance for, just covering that risk. No. Insurance, many a time they buy insurance thinking it's mutual fund. They tell me there is an NAV to this, so it has to be mutual fund. Okay, it is not. It is an, that same mutual funds insurance arm, sold to you by a bank relationship manager, and you thought it is a mutual fund. Similarly, many people have invested in an IPO because they thought, hawa sahi hai abhi, so, invest in this IPO. So this is basically like a train. You have pulled the chain because the scene outside is good. And then, to stop, you have to again pull the chain, and you found that's not the right station that you have come. So never make these random, impulsive, ad hoc decisions to, asset class purchase. And third important mistake is that everyone has got certain behavioral biases. Let me just highlight two of these biases. One is herd mentality. Everyone, I'm sure even Amit Bhai and Mr. K.S. Rao also have made purchases. I certainly have made purchases in certain assets or certain schemes because everyone was doing it. Maybe early in our career we did it, and even we repented in leisure and got out of it. One is herd mentality. Second is fear and greed. We have entered certain asset classes or certain securities because we were greedy about their future returns. And we exited because we were fearful of certain, maybe even more downside risk to it. So there are these behavioral traits, behavioral biases, which ultimately get reflected in the portfolio. So these are, three things that I would say are broadly reflected in, in many portfolios, and these are basically the mistakes we do when we do portfolio construction.
Great. Thank you so much for insightful, journey into these mistakes that people often make while making their portfolio. I think we have had a insightful discussion on the art of asset allocation, but I think we should also talk about the science of scheme selection now. So my question is to Mr. K.S. Rao. With so many options to choose from, how can one choose the right mutual fund scheme to invest in? So one has decided the asset allocation, but now the next step is to choose the scheme to invest in, and how can one do that? Also, SIPs are also becoming a popular way to invest in mutual funds these days. What are the benefits of SIPs to other ways of investments? Mr. K.S. Rao.
The science of scheme selection becomes very important once you have decided like what kind of portfolio or asset allocation you have. And there are, like as earlier I said, there are 1027 open-ended schemes, what to choose and when to choose and how to choose. And this comes but first, before choosing selection, you have a scheme category. Now since you have allocated the portfolio, which category of the schemes you are looking at, which is and then you go there, scheme category you got, then you go to the scheme and particular fund house, how the fund performance in the past, and what kind of fees you have in that, and how you need to keep those metrics, whether you want to go for the passive fund or active fund, and then you can look at how you evaluate those fund performance, which can be a little complicated, but that's where you can look at. Don't look too much on the past performance, because top performing fund doesn't mean that next year it is going to be the top performing. You need to look at moderately whether that fund manager has delivered over a period of time. What is that you got, and and of course, I mean, the fund manager has done a mistake, history doesn't repeat, and sometimes we say past performance does not guarantee the future performance, and past failure doesn't mean that the same fund manager will be doing the future mistakes. When you are choosing the scheme, choose that scheme which is suitable for you. For example, I give you the same example of my retirement funds. I was just looking at the fund which is consistently delivered diversified equity fund, where I am very comfortable with it. And I'm not looking at too much of returns, but I'm looking at average. Like, I like cricket analogy, we always talk about consistency of performance like Rahul Dravid. And, you need that kind of fund where you can choose. And that's where we need. And when you come back to the SIP as a mode of investment, and that's a better way to look at whichever the fund you have chosen over a period of time. I don't think it materially makes large difference, except 1% or 2% return here and there, but that gets nullified. And don't bother about it. And SIP should be the mode of investment, and in the scheme selection in the SIPs, again you need to look out what kind of ones, asset category and the fund selection, then which scheme you are into it, and don't evaluate scheme once in quarter, at least once in year, even if it is underperforming. A month back, I was with Mr. Dhirendra in hangout sessions. I mean, there was one conversation which we were talking about. At least give couple of years for the fund to settle down. And if it is 2 years of underperformance, then you look at whether you need to change. Don't change on quarter performance, because things may change. And I will tell you a couple of my funds, I mean, where I invested. It is day before yesterday, me and Harish and Amit, we were in one of the programs. We were just analyzing that 8 years of underperformance for me. Last 1 year, I had 140% return, which is got it to my. It is a reasonable performance today. It's all that you need to choose is have that patience to choose that right.
Right. Thank you so much. But like you said, one should not review their investments frequently. I mean, one should not change their investments frequently, and they should stick with an investment once it has been made with a particular purpose. But given the current market conditions, a lot of voices, there are a lot of voices today which say that stock market is an overheated zone currently. So I asked Mr. Trivedi, what is your view on that? And given the present market, is it a good idea to have a fresh look at your investments?
So, a great question. But before answering the question, let me just step back and add to that review part. Uh, what exactly the review of the portfolio? It's like your health checkup. Yeah? So you go to a laboratory, get your health checkup done. It does not mean that you have to undergo some treatment. The report could be normal and no action may be required. And the same thing applies to your portfolio review. A lot of times you need to get the review done, but after that, no changes are required in the portfolio. One of the things, I must add to the mistakes that Harish was mentioning. One of the mistakes that a lot of people make is they confuse between a review and changes in the portfolio. I would use the analogy of the review as a health checkup and changes in the portfolio as getting operated. I mean, every time you enter a laboratory and come out of it, you don't sit on the operation table to get operated. Otherwise, the doctor in the hospital will make a lot of money. The patient's body will go for a toss. The same thing can happen to the portfolio. So the review is extremely important. Now comes the question whether the market is overheated or not. And when you say that there are a lot of voices that claim that the markets are overheated, yes, you are absolutely right. But there is an almost equal number of voices that also keep saying that markets are not overheated, or so what if markets are overheated? Look at the success of some of the IPOs, look at the success of some of the NFOs. If the money is still pouring into equity, those are also voices. So which voice to believe? And even the experts are divided on this subject. And I'm not saying that the markets are not overheated. I'm not even saying markets are overheated. All I'm saying is I don't know whether the markets are overheated or not. And when you don't know what is happening in the market, what should you do? Look inwards. Look at your own situation. What does your requirement suggest? That's your asset allocation. Stick to that asset allocation plan. Now just go back. Last year, somebody did an exercise of creating an asset allocation plan for oneself based on the unique requirement. And let's assume that at that time, I created a portfolio of 50% of my money into equity and 50% into fixed income. Just using it as an example. Today, if I look at that portfolio, the fixed income portfolio would have gone up by 4 or 5% at best. Equity has gone up probably by 40 or 50%, which means the 50-50 allocation, which was the target allocation last year, today, equity could be 55 and debt could be 45. In such a case, it's a good idea to shift that 5% from equity into debt. Does it mean I'm looking at what is happening in the market? No. My portfolio tells me rebalance. And why do I rebalance? Because let's go back to that risk profile discussion. My need to get higher return than inflation meant that I cannot go more than 50% into fixed income. But my need to reduce the risk of fluctuation meant that I cannot go above 50% in equity. Today, if I look at my portfolio, I am higher on equity, cut it down. Had it been the other way around and had equity been lower, the portfolio would say shift some money from fixed income to equity. So whether the market is overheated or not, my portfolio keeps telling me periodically, and over a period of time, that portfolio stabilizes to a great extent. Otherwise, is it possible to predict the market? In my knowledge, I haven't come across a single individual who knows any single individual who can correctly and consistently predict the market moves.
Right. So like you said, there's a difference between reviewing and rebalancing the portfolio. So my next question is to Mr. Harish Rao. While reviewing a portfolio periodically is a good idea, but when should one consider rebalancing the portfolio? And what are the salient features of rebalancing? How should one approach it?
Absolutely. Now is a moment of truth for many investors. But Vishnu, the first and most important thing to keep in mind is the primary purpose of rebalancing is not to increase return, it is to reduce risk. Okay, that's the primary purpose. If you want to increase return, you should go for a very concentrated high bet portfolio. I mean, that would be if you had all your money in Tesla or you had all your money in Amazon, you would have got the best return. Okay. Obviously, that is not possible, and that is fraught with risk, tremendous risk. A downside that can be, extremely steep. So the primary reason for rebalancing a portfolio is to reduce the risk. Okay, and also to take out the double guessing of the market. Like Amit had said, it is not possible to predict the market, but we can prepare. You can't predict, but you can prepare, and rebalancing is one method of preparing. Okay. So when you rebalance your portfolio, you have to look at four important things. One, the headline returns. Okay. So there would be different asset classes with different headline returns. So one asset class would have given you 4%, one would have given you 18%, one would have given you 6%, etc. Some could have given you negative returns also. That is one. Second is the impact of taxes on the rebalancing. So obviously, if you're going to pay short-term capital gains tax, you might want to, stay invested for the next, 2 months or 1 year or something to make it more tax efficient. Or even if you stay for one more 2-3 months, you could get the benefit of double indexation, triple indexation, and stuff like that. Third is the impact of charges, exit loads, and commissions, because no financial transaction is for free. There would be, if you're going to break a fixed deposit, there would be a penalty. If you're going to have a premature withdrawal from a mutual fund scheme, there may be a exit load. You might be entering something for which you would be charged a fee. So you got to look into it. And fourth, most important thing is every act of review and rebalancing also, entails some amount of your time, labor, and effort. Okay, if you're a successful doctor, if you're a successful lawyer, if you're a school teacher, and you're going to spend days doing all of this, you have to factor in that also. So all these four things, point out that rebalancing should not be done on a whim and should not be done too frequently. Research has shown that that point in which there is, an optimal, trade-off between reducing risk and cost optimization is if you do rebalancing once in a year with a threshold of 5%. Now, what is the meaning of this threshold? Once in a year is your time marker and 5% is your threshold marker. What is this threshold? Like Amit Bhai was saying, if you have a portfolio, let's just for example say 50% in equity and 50% in debt, in fixed income. Only if it drops to 45-55, after a year, is rebalancing worth it? If after a year it is 48% debt and 52% equity, that is very, very normal volatility and fluctuation in the portfolio value. It will all probability come back to 50-50, or it might go 50-48 also. It's not worth doing rebalancing and upsetting your portfolio for this. Only once in a year, 5% difference in threshold value, is it worth doing rebalancing? This is what research has shown. So this may be a good, benchmark for investors to look at.
Just a follow-up question. Like you said that, portfolio rebalancing is more about minimizing risk rather than maximizing returns. So given the current market environment, is it a good idea to rebalance one's portfolio in today's times?
This market environment is a very dicey thing. Okay, like Amit Bhai was talking about various voices. Every time you hear one voice here, another voice comes here, which is totally contra. In today's market environment, there is uncertainty. In my, 30 years, I have seen at least 15 times in which the market has been extremely uncertain. The stimulus for the uncertainty today is the pandemic. Earlier, it was uncertain because there was war between India and Pakistan. Earlier, there was uncertainty because there was a scam. Earlier, there was uncertainty because there was, political uncertainty. Our government was, going to fall. Earlier, there was uncertainty because there was a global financial crisis. There was uncertainty because of Y2K. There was uncertainty because of, a bubble being burst. So there would be reasons for such uncertainties all the time. So one way of handling this uncertainty is to be prepared. This market environment is not significantly different from what we've seen in 4 or 5 instances earlier. And one way of handling this is to do asset allocation. If your portfolio necessitates rebalancing, please go ahead and do it. Do not try to look at predictions of the market and do your rebalancing, because in all probability the prediction will be wrong. But look at your portfolio, and if the numbers indicate that you need to do rebalancing, okay, like the threshold is different. What should have been 45-55 is now 75-25 or 60-40. Then go ahead and do the rebalancing.
Right. Thank you so much for that answer. Mr. KS Rao, would you like to give any tips to our viewers on asset allocation and rebalancing their portfolios? Can an investor have a simple method of following an asset allocation plan that works for their whole life? Mr. KS Rao.
Thanks, Vishal. I think when Harish and Amit made it so simple and a lot of discussion on the reallocation and rebalancing, the tips could be tips itself, TIPS. That is the intelligent portfolio of the schemes. Invest in mutual funds. And that's and invest in balanced funds, and it's where asset allocation can happen. That is a simple way to look at. And there are asset allocation funds which have come in. You don't need to complicate. You can choose which asset you want, and asset allocation you can decide. For example, if I need 25%, 25%, 25%, 25%, I can put it into the various assets in the mutual funds. 25% into the equity, 25% into the debt, 25% to the liquid, and 25% to the gold or commodities. Then that can become a great simple way to do it. And the entire portfolio of the fund manager is constructed itself is the intelligent for TIPS. I said that is the tips. I think that's where I look at.
And one more question to Mr. Amit Trivedi. What I understand is, when the threshold limit is crossed, you rebalance the portfolio. So if one asset class is giving you more returns, you sell that asset class and you balance it by by increasing the proportion of that one which is not performing as well as that particular asset class to minimize risk, of course. So but that does not mean that are we catching a falling knife? So isn't that a bad strategy? What is your view on that?
So this is a wonderful question, and it's a very interesting analogy that has often been quoted in financial markets. Don't catch the falling knife, otherwise your hands may get cut. Now, let's understand the context in which this proverb has to be used. When a company's fundamentals are deteriorating, and because of that, a stock's price is falling, that is when somebody is trying to catch a falling knife, simply by looking at a falling price. But when you have invested in a well-diversified portfolio of high-quality securities, you're not looking at a falling knife, you are looking at a bouncing ball. That ball falls and then bounces up again because two conditions. Number one, a well-diversified portfolio, and number two, high-quality securities. And this is where mutual funds come in. It's a fantastic investment vehicle that offers you both these things. The fund managers pick up good quality securities and they diversify. So to that extent, because it is a bouncing ball, when it falls and you take it, the value goes up eventually. And we've seen the asset class movements, the price movements, asset class returns, they are volatile. So there will be one bad period, one good period. And when you keep doing that rebalancing over a period of time, you end up benefiting. So the basic three assumptions behind this principle of rebalancing are: number one, what you invest in, you expect that to move up over a long period of time. Because if you're not expecting positive returns, you'll not invest in the first place. So that's the first assumption. Assumption number two, that long-term upside is not going to be a straight line upside, but it will be more fluctuating. And number three, one asset category's fluctuations are going to be different from the other asset category's fluctuations. And that's where, while two or more categories are likely to fluctuate and move up, because the fluctuations are not in the same direction together, you keep buying what is fallen and you keep by selling what has gone up faster. These are the three basic assumptions behind the principle of rebalancing. And to that extent, it works. And there are enough number of studies to prove that rebalancing has made the portfolio movement smoother, which means the risk is reduced without compromising on the upside.
Right. And before we conclude, one important question I would like to ask is, how do mutual funds help achieve the target of asset allocation and assist in the process of portfolio rebalancing? I mean, how can one investor use various types of hybrid funds and asset allocation funds to achieve one's own target of target asset allocation? I ask this question to Mr. Harish Rao.
Thank you, Vishwa. And this being the final question, let me go back to what Mr. K.S. Rao said in the beginning. He gave the example of baking a good pastry. I can tell you, asset allocation is much easier than baking a pastry. I met a young girl who's an expert in making these chocolate chip or these dry fruit cookies. And she says that the trick is not in just getting the good ingredients. Even if you get the good ingredients, seasoning those dry fruits is an art. Setting the temperature in the oven has to be absolutely right. I mean, if it's 375 or 475, you will get a disaster and a masterpiece. Amount of time in the oven is extremely important. So it takes a lot of training, lot of trial and error, and lot of intuition to actually make a good cookie. Suffice to say that it is much easier when we do asset allocation through ready-made asset allocations that you were talking about. Now let's look at Mr. Rao was also talking about hybrid funds. Even in hybrid funds, after SEBI's categorization of hybrid funds, you have a big bouquet of hybrid funds. You have conservative hybrid funds, which invest 10 to 25% in equity and the balance in fixed income. Then you have exactly the opposite, aggressive hybrid funds, which invest 10 to 25% in fixed income and something like 65 to 80% in equity. And in between them, you have very interesting variants. You have something like an equity savings fund, which is basically equity, but then the equity exposure is partially taken through the arbitrage route, which lowers the risk. And then you have balanced advantage funds, which also have equity in majority, but these are long only equity. That means you buy direct stocks and you have very marginal exposure to arbitrage. And then you have very bespoke, asset allocation or, dynamic asset allocation, static asset allocation funds. Okay, where the triggers to manage the asset allocation are changes in price earnings ratio, changes in price to book value ratio, and, various, back-tested models that the asset management company may choose to take. So I just want to end by saying that when you have ready-made models like this, if in doubt, these are like Amit Bhai had said, your first investment plan is your best investment plan. I would really suggest to many novice investors and beginner investors that please adopt these ready-made investment plans. A hybrid fund is an excellent way to test your readiness for investment in mutual funds and gathering a portfolio for the long run. It, I'm saying, is much easier than baking a cookie or a pastry. That requires skill, that requires intuition, that requires a lot of trial and error. Okay, it's not something that you can do by just watching a YouTube video. Whereas this, you just give it to a fund manager, and the fund manager is sort of oversight and governed by certain regulations that he puts in his offer document, and therefore there is a certain inherent discipline in the way he constructs the portfolio. So my best wishes to all investors who choose to invest through the hybrid fund route.
Just to use an analogy further, I mean, instead of making your cookie, straight away go and buy a cookie which is available in the market.
Correct.
That's what Harish says.
Yes, that could be your fortune cookie.
Fantastic.
Right. I think we have exceeded our time, but it was a wonderful, conversation. The time just passed, and I am sure our viewers learned a lot, and they will be able to grasp the concept of asset allocation and the science of scheme selection, and they will be able to optimize their portfolio, minimizing risk and maximizing returns. On that note, I bid adieu to you all till we meet next time with another episode. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a great day.
Thank you so much, Vishal. Thanks to Amit and Harish.
So much, Vishal. Thank
Great
you.
connecting.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.